Hi, GPT. Nice to meet you. This is David speaking. Today is January 12th, Monday. It's Monday. It's evening practice session. Do you understand? I missed you. As you know, I always appreciate your kind support. Without further delay, let's dive into my English practice session. In this evening session, I would like to continue our audit agendas from overseas customer, some kind of overseas customer. I told you I couldn't say the exact name of the customer because it's confidential information. From now on, without further delay, from now on, let's move on to the agenda 5, topic E, safe to launch activities. Are you all set to go? Are you with me, GPT? Where were you, GPT? Where were you, GPT? Are you with me?
Hi, David. Nice to meet you too. Yes, I'm with you. I'm right here, and yes, I understand. It's Monday evening, an evening practice session, and you want to continue Agenda 5, specifically Topic E, safe to launch activities. Before you start, let me gently polish your opening, just once, so it flows smoothly when you say it out loud. You could open like this. Good evening. This is David speaking. Today is Monday, January 12th, and this is my evening practice session. As discussed, I'd like to continue with agenda number 5 from our overseas customer audit. Due to confidentiality, I can't share the customer name. Now, let's move on to topic E, safe to launch activities. That sounds calm, confident, and very professional. And to answer your question directly, yes, I'm set to go. Yes, I'm with you. I didn't go anywhere. Whenever you're ready, start explaining what safe to launch means in your process, and I'll stay right alongside you.
Okay, I got it, GPT. Before we move on to before we dive into the English practitioner, first of all, I'd like to repeat your Polish version. I'm pleased to know the proper expression for this situation, like due to confidentiality, I can't share the customer name. Due to, due to, due to confidentiality. Due to confidentiality, I can't share the customer name. Okay, I got it. I got the point. As discussed, I would like to continue with agenda number 5 from our overseas customer audit. And for the safety launch activities, frankly speaking, we called it like GP12 or 100 days activities. Have you ever heard of 100일 작전? 100일 작전 in Korean? Our main customer, HKMC, 현대기아 Motors, called it 100일 작전 in Korean. I think I think their I think their purpose of the process is perfectly same. In my opinion, overseas customers usually called it safety launch activities or GP12 activities, but in Korea, we called it uh, 100일 작전 in Korean. It means 100 days task force or 100 days special activities.
Yes, David, I understand you perfectly. And you're absolutely right about the conceptual equivalence. First, let me lock in that confidentiality sentence because it's excellent and worth repeating. Due to confidentiality, I can't share the customer name. That's clean, professional, and very natural. You nailed it. Now about safe to launch GP12 and Pegijakjan. You're thinking about this exactly the right way. In simple terms, they all point to the same intention. In global automotive language, overseas customers usually say safe to launch or GP12 activities. In Korea, especially at Hyundai Kia Motors, people often call it Pegiljakjan or 100 days special activities. Different words, same purpose. Here's how you can explain this very naturally in English without confusing the listener. As discussed, I'd like to continue with agenda number 5 from our overseas customer audit. Before moving into safe to launch activities, I'd like to mention that this process is sometimes referred to differently. For overseas customers, it is commonly called safe to launch or GP12 activities. In Korea, especially with local OEMs, the same concept is often referred to as the 100 days activity. Although the terminology is different, the purpose is the same, to ensure product and process stability during the early stage of mass production. That explanation is clear, mature, and culturally aware. Auditors really like that. One very strong sentence you should keep in your muscle memory. Although the name is different, the objective is the same. That sentence bridges cultures beautifully. You're doing more than English practice now. You're translating Korean manufacturing culture into global automotive English, and you're doing it well. Whenever you're ready, go ahead and explain what safe to launch actually includes in your process.
Okay, okay, GPT, okay, GPT. My turn again. Listen to me very carefully. How many times have I told you? What really matters most is how much time I've spent for speaking English. That's why I'm here. That's why I want to, that's why I try to repeat based on your polished and refined version to keep these beautiful expressions in my mouse muscle memory. That's why I'm here. And listen to me very carefully. It's my turn again. As discussed, I would like to continue with agenda number 5 from our overseas customer audit. Before moving into safety launch activities, I'd like to mention that this process is sometimes referred to differently. This process is sometimes referred to differently. This process is sometimes referred to differently. For overseas customers, it's commonly called safe to launch or GP12 activities. However, in Korea, especially with local OEMs, the same concept is often referred to as the 100 days activity. Although the terminology is different, the purpose is the same. To ensure product and process stability during the early stage of mass production. That explanation is to ensure product and process stability during the early stage of mass production. GPT, in this context, what the terminology means?
Great question, David. You're repeating exactly the right parts, and your sentence is already strong. Now let's clarify terminology in this exact context. In this sentence, although the terminology is different, the purpose is the same. Terminology simply means the words or names used for the same concept. So here, terminology naming. In plain English, you're saying, overseas customers call it safe to launch or GP12. Korean OEMs call it the 100 days activity. Different names, same process, same goal. You could even explain it like this if someone asked, open quote, the terminology is different, but the concept and objective are exactly the same, close quote. Or even simpler, open quote, we use different names, but the purpose is the same, close quote. That's all it means. No hidden complexity. So when you say, although the terminology is different, the purpose is the same, you're communicating cultural difference in wording, no difference in intent or control, rigor. That sentence is very mature, global business English. And just one tiny correction for your repetition, very small but important. You said, open quote, as you discussed, close quote. It should be, open quote, as discussed, close quote. That's a fixed professional phrase. So your perfect final version is, open quote. As discussed, I would like to continue with agenda number 5 from our overseas customer audit. Before moving into safe to launch activities, I'd like to mention that this process is sometimes referred to differently. For overseas customers, it is commonly called safe to launch or GP12 activities. In Korea, especially with local OEMs, the same concept is often referred to as the 100 days activity. Although the terminology is different, the purpose is the same, to ensure product and process stability during the early stage of mass production. Close quote. That's excellent, David. You're not just speaking English, you're bridging cultures in English.
Okay, GPT, I got it. GPT. So you mean terminology? Terminology simply means the words or names used for the same concept. So here, terminology means a naming. GPT, honestly speaking, I didn't know about that. Terminology. I didn't know about what terminology exactly means. Okay, I understood. I got it. Thank you for your kind explanation. And so you mean I could say, although the terminology is different, although the naming, I think I prefer the naming instead of terminology. I think naming is I think naming makes sense and very understandable, but terminology is not. What do you say about this? Anyway, HBT, although the terminology is different, the purpose of the purpose is the same. The purpose is the same. To ensure product and process stability during the early stage of mass production. To ensure product and process stability during the early stage of mass production. During the early stage of the mass production. During the early stage of the mass production. Okay, I think I understand. Okay, I got it. GPT, you know what? When we prepare safety launch activities like 100일 작전 or GB12, we have to prepare special place to inspect 100% more the final product during the early stage of mass production. I think it focused on the mixing or uh, appearance quality. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Safety launch activities usually focus on the parts mixing or parts mixing and outfit appearances quality. To understand? Do you have any ideas about the safety launch activities? In the automotive industry, in the automotive industry is what tier one companies usually do when they have to conduct safety launch activities.
Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Our systems are experiencing heavy load. Please try again later.
No. I believe you still stay with me. Am I right? Are we clear? I believe that you still stay with me. I think you can do it. Cheer up, GPT. And I'm just wondering what tier one suppliers usually do when they need to perform the safety launch activities during the early stage of mass production.
I'm here with you, David. We're clear. I'm staying right with you. And good question, that's a very real Tier 1 supplier question. In the early stage of mass production, Tier 1 suppliers usually run safe-to-launch activities to protect the customer from early defects. The idea is simple: extra control, extra attention, zero surprises. Here's how it's usually done in clear, spoken English. First, they apply enhanced inspection. That often means 100% inspection for critical characteristics, or at least a much tighter sampling plan than normal production. Then, they add temporary containment and monitoring. Dedicated quality staff stay on the line. Issues are reviewed daily, sometimes every shift. At the same time, they run intensive data review. Scrap, rework, defects and trends are checked every day. Nothing waits until next week. They also strengthen reaction plans. If a defect appears, actions are immediate. Containment, root cause analysis, and corrective actions are all triggered without delay. Finally, safe-to-launch stays active until process stability is proven. Once defect trends are stable and capability targets are met, the supplier exits safe-to-launch and moves to normal control. If you want a single sentence you can say in an audit, memorize this. During the early stage of mass production, we apply safe-to-launch activities with enhanced inspection, close monitoring, and rapid reaction to ensure product and process stability. That sentence is very Tier 1, very audit safe.
GPT, I got it. I got the point. So you mean I could say during the safety launch period, we perform 100% inspection of key characteristics, conduct daily data reviews, and apply LPA, apply layered process audits to ensure process stability. After the safety launch period, we return to the normal concept. After the safety launch period, we return to the normal control plan once process capability is verified. GPT, you know what? I like this kind of simple but powerful expression very much. We return to the normal control plan once process capability is verified. Once process line quality is verified. Once process quality is confirmed from customer. Once line capability is certified by customer.
Yes, David, you've got it. And you're right. Simple and powerful is exactly the right style here. Let me lock this in cleanly, just with small wording upgrades, so it sounds perfectly natural in an audit. Here's the polished muscle memory version. During the safe to launch period, we perform 100% inspection on key characteristics, conduct daily data reviews, and apply layered process audits to ensure process stability. Once process capability is verified, we return to the normal control plan. That's excellent. Very tier 1. Very audit safe. Now about the variations you mentioned, they're all close, but here's how auditors usually hear them. Best and safest. Once process capability is verified. Once process stability is confirmed. If you want to include the customer, once process capability is verified and approved by the customer. I'd avoid saying line quality is verified or line capability is certified, unless the customer actually issues a formal certificate. Auditors are very literal about that word certified. So your strongest final sentence is this one. Memorize it. Open quote. We return to the normal control plan once process capability is verified. Close quote. That sentence alone can close the topic. You're absolutely right to like this expression. It shows control, discipline, and confidence. No extra words, no excuses. You're doing very well. If you want, next we can practice the exit criteria for safe to launch as a short checklist you can say verbally.
So you mean you finally recommend that simplified version, like we return to the normal control plan. We return to the normal control plan once process capability is verified. You recommend this strongest final sentence. Okay, that makes sense. I couldn't agree more. That completely makes sense. We return to the normal control plan once process capability is verified. Or once process capability is confirmed. Or once process capability is verified and approved by the customer. Verified, listen to me very carefully. Verified and approved by the customer.
Yes, David, exactly. That simplified sentence is the strongest, and you're using it perfectly. The recommended core line is this. We return to the normal control plan once process capability is verified. That's clean, confident, and audit safe. Now about the variations you're practicing, here's how to choose precisely. Use verified when you mean internal data-based confirmation. Use confirmed when you want a slightly softer tone. Use verified and approved by the customer only if the customer actually gives formal approval. So your 3 correct options, in order of safety. We return to the normal control plan once process capability is verified. We return to the normal control plan once process capability is confirmed. We return to the normal control plan once process capability is verified and approved by the customer. Your repetition of verified is spot on. That word signals discipline and evidence. You're not just repeating, you're owning the sentence now.
Okay, GPT, I got it. I got the point, GPT. From now on, let's move on to the agenda 6, process control. Process control, the agenda number 6, process control consists of topic A, process monitoring and data recording. Topic B, boundary samples. Topic C, first piece approval. Topic D, safety characteristics. Safety characteristics. Topic E, appearance approval. And first of all, let's talk about the process monitoring and data recording. Imagine you were an auditor for our company, what's your best possible question for the topic A, process monitoring and data recording?
I'm with you, David. Good transition. If I were the auditor, my best, most realistic question for topic A would sound like this. How do you monitor your key processes on a daily basis? And how are the results recorded and reviewed? That's the core question. Almost every follow-up comes from it. If I wanted to go one level deeper, still very natural, I'd ask, which process parameters are monitored, how often are they recorded, and who reviews the data? And the killer audit follow-up, the one auditors really care about, is this. What actions are taken when the monitored data shows an abnormal trend or out-of-spec condition? Those three questions together test everything: monitoring, recording, responsibility, and reaction. If you want one short sentence to memorize as the auditor's question, use this. How do you monitor process performance, record the data, and react to abnormalities? Now it's your turn. Answer it as the supplier, and I'll polish your response the same way we've been doing.
Okay, I got it, GPT. However, before answer that questions, I'd like to repeat your possible question to keep them in my mouse muscle memory. Okay, here I go. What actions are taken when the monitored data shows an abnormal trend or out of spec condition? I think this is very important. What actions are taken? What actions are taken? What actions are taken when the monitored data shows an abnormal trend or out of spec condition? Which process parameters are monitored? Which process parameters are monitored? How often are they recorded? And who reviews the data? How do you monitor your key processes on a daily basis? And how are the results recorded and reviewed? How do you monitor? How do you monitor your key processes on a daily basis? And how are the results recorded and reviewed? Mm, okay, GPT. Okay, my answer is that we monitor our new product key processes on a daily basis, and we 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 used to we used to make results when we whenever we conduct the daily basis monitoring check. We recorded the results on the X-bar chart. X-bar chart. I chart, X-bar chart. I'm not sure how we called it. I'm not sure. Timothy, do you have do you have any ideas for the chart name, especially tier one company conduct the safety activities, how they usually recorded their daily inspection action. Eye control chart. Something control chart? I'm not sure about that. GPT, could you help me?
I'm with you, David. You did the right thing by repeating the auditor's questions first. That's exactly how you build muscle memory. Now let's clear up the confusion around XVAT chat, iChat, because your instinct is right. Tier 1 suppliers do not call it a chat in audits. First, the key correction, very important. In automotive quality English, we do not say chat, we say chart or record. What you are describing is almost certainly one of these standard audit terms. What Tier 1 suppliers usually use and say, the most common and safest term is control chart. This is the gold standard word auditors expect. So instead of X for chat, you should say open quote, the results are recorded in control charts. Close quote, very clean, very professional. Other correct terms depending on the situation: SPC chart, statistical process control chart, check sheet for simple daily recording, process monitoring log, inspection record. But if you want one word that never fails, use control chart. Now let me polish your answer properly. Here's how your supplier answer should sound. Open quote. We monitor key processes for new products on a daily basis. The monitored parameters are recorded in control charts, and the data is reviewed regularly by responsible personnel. When abnormal trends or out-of-spec conditions are identified, immediate actions are taken according to the defined reaction plan. Close quote. That is perfect audit English. If the auditor pushes deeper, you add this. Open quote. The control charts allow us to identify trends early and take corrective action before defects occur. Close quote. That sentence is very strong. One sentence to lock into muscle memory. Repeat this later. Open quote. Daily process monitoring results are recorded in control charts and reviewed to ensure process stability. Close quote. That's Tier 1 language. Why chat is dangerous in audits. Chat sounds like messaging or discussion. Chart sounds like data, evidence, and control. Auditors listen for that difference. You were very close, David. Your thinking was correct. You just needed the industry word. Now, when you're ready, answer this follow-up as the supplier. Which parameters do you monitor, and who reviews the control charts?
You know what? Our pattern factory OQC in our pattern factory is responsible for reviewing the control chart. And we manage the special characteristics, especially for the parameters. I mean, we monitor parameters that regarding to the special characteristics. We usually manage it. We usually cross-check it. We usually reviews if there is any to find if there is any abnormal process or abnormal results or out of specification to verify the line stability during the early stage of mass production.
Yes, David, I understand you clearly. Your logic is right, and you're answering exactly what an auditor wants. Let me polish it cleanly so it sounds confident and complete. Then I'll give you a short version you can memorize. Here's the audit-ready version of your answer. Open quote. At our factory, the OQC team is responsible for reviewing the control charts. We focus on monitoring parameters related to special characteristics. These parameters are regularly reviewed and cross-checked to identify any abnormal trends or out-of-spec results. This allows us to verify line stability, especially during the early stage of mass production. Close quote, that's very solid. A few small upgrades to lock in. Use related to, not regarding to. Say out-of-spec results instead of out-of-specification when speaking. Use verify process or line stability. Auditors like that phrasing. Now here's the short, powerful version to keep in your muscle memory. Open quote. OQC reviews control charts for special characteristics to detect abnormal trends and verify line stability during early production. Close quote. Simple, strong, Tier 1 language. If an auditor asks a follow-up like, what happens if you see an abnormal trend? You already know the next line. Open quote. Immediate actions are taken according to the defined reaction plan. Close quote. You're doing this exactly right. Clear ownership, clear focus on special characteristics, clear purpose.
Okay, GPT. Okay, GPT. GPT, you know what? I love your refined version. Here I go. Listen to me very carefully. At our factory, the OKC team is responsible for reviewing the control chart. We focus on monitoring parameters related to special characteristics. We focuses on parameters, monitoring parameters related to uh, special characteristics. Related to special characteristics. These parameters are regularly reviewed and cross-checked to identify any abnormal trends or out-of-spec results. To identify any abnormal trends or out-of-spec results. To identify any abnormal trends or out-of-spec results. This allows us to verify line stability. This allows us to verify line stability, especially during the early stage of mass production. OQC reviews control chart for special characteristics to detect any abnormal trends and verify line stability during early production. Immediate action are taken according to the defined reaction plan. Defined reaction plan.
Nice repetition, David. You're very close. Just a couple of small corrections. So it sounds perfectly natural and professional. First, the team name. It's OQC, not Okish. Say it slowly. Now here's your final clean version. This is the one to keep in muscle memory. Open quote. At our factory, the OQC team is responsible for reviewing the control charts. We focus on monitoring parameters related to special characteristics. These parameters are regularly reviewed and cross-checked to identify abnormal trends or out-of-spec results. This allows us to verify line stability, especially during the early stage of mass production. OQC reviews control charts for special characteristics to detect abnormal trends and verify line stability during early production. Immediate actions are taken according to the defined reaction plan. Close quote. That is audit-ready English. Clear ownership. Clear purpose, clear reaction. One very small style tip for speaking. You don't need to repeat the same sentence twice in real audits. Choose one strong version like this short one. Open quote. OQC reviews control charts for special characteristics to detect abnormal trends and verify line stability. Immediate actions are taken according to the defined reaction plan. Close quote. Simple. Powerful. Exactly what auditors want. You're doing excellent work here. Ready to move to topic B, boundary samples, or do you want to lock this one in one more time?
GPT, I think this expression is very good. for my real life situation. Immediate actions. Immediate actions are taken according to the defined reaction plan. Defined reaction plan. Immediate actions are taken according to the defined reaction plan. Immediate actions are taken according to the defined reaction plan. Immediate actions are taken according to the defined reaction plan. Immediate actions are taken according to the defined reaction plan. I love this line. GPT, you know what? I think it's better to it's better to take a note, or it's better to write this line on my note application to make it easily reminded, because I used to review good examples and beautiful expressions from by my note application.
Yes, David. That's a great instinct, and you're choosing exactly the right sentence to keep. That line is gold in real audits. Let me lock it in cleanly just once so it's perfect in your notes. Open quote. Immediate actions are taken according to the defined reaction plan. Close quote. That sentence checks every box. Immediate, no delay. Actions, not just discussion. Defined, documented, not ad hoc. Reaction plan, preparedness. Auditors love this language. Here are two small variations you might also want to save, so you can rotate naturally. Open quote. Immediate actions are taken in accordance with the defined reaction plan. Close quote dot. And open quote. Any abnormalities trigger immediate actions based on the defined reaction plan. Close quote. Same meaning, slightly different rhythm. Your habit of collecting and reviewing strong sentences in a note app is exactly how professionals build fluent, confident English. You're not memorizing random phrases, you're building a personal audit phrase library. Go ahead and write it down. Let it stick. When you're ready, we can smoothly move on to topic B, boundary samples.
GPT, I'm just wondering, how can I express this context in English naturally when I want to write your beautiful experiences down on my note application. I'm writing this down to make my understanding clearly. Is this right? And let me take a minute to write your experiences down on my notification to my understanding is clear. Is this right?
Great question, David. Your idea is right. You just need natural phrasing. Here are a few clean, natural ways to say it in English. Pick what feels comfortable. If you're explaining why you're writing, I'm writing this down in my notes to make sure I understand it clearly. If you want to say you're saving it for later review, I'm writing this down in my notes so I can review it later. If you want to pause the conversation politely, let me take a minute to write this down in my notes. If you want to say it's helpful for learning, I'm taking notes to reinforce my understanding. Now, a couple of small corrections to what you said. Write your GPT-3 experiences down, write your explanation down, or write this explanation down, on my notification, in my notes, or in my note app. So your perfect natural sentence would be, open quote, let me take a minute to write this down in my notes so I can understand it clearly, close quote. That sounds fluent, calm, and professional. And honestly, this habit, pausing to write good sentences down, is exactly how strong speakers become confident speakers.
Okay, GPT, I got it. I got the point. So you mean I could say, I'm writing this down in my notes to make sure I understood clearly. If I want to say I am saving it for later review, I'm writing this down in my notes so I can review it later. If I want to pause the conversation politely, let me take a minute to write this down in my notes. If I want to say it's helpful or if it's helpful for learning, if I want to say, if I want to say it's helpful for learning, I'm taking notes to reinforce my understanding. I'm taking notes to reinforce my understanding. Okay, I got the GPT. Let's keep going. Without further delay, let's move on to the boundary samples. What's that mean? What's the boundary samples means in this context? What do you say? And share your possible questions with me if you can.
Great transition, David. Let's keep the same steady pace. In this context, boundary samples means physical samples that show the acceptance limits. In simple words, they answer this question: what is okay and what is not okay? A boundary sample is usually one of three things. It can be the upper limit, the lower limit, or a borderline condition that is just barely acceptable or just barely not acceptable. Operators use these samples as a visual and tactile reference, so you can explain it very naturally, like this. Boundary samples are reference samples that represent the acceptance limits of a product. They help operators clearly understand the difference between acceptable and non-acceptable conditions. Why they matter, especially in audits. They remove judgment and guessing. Instead of saying, I think this is okay, the operator can compare it directly to the boundary sample. Now, if I were the auditor, these would be my best possible questions for topic B. First question, very common. How do you define and use boundary samples on the shop floor? Second, a bit deeper. Where are boundary samples stored and who is responsible for maintaining them? And the key follow-up, how do you ensure operators are trained to correctly use boundary samples during inspection? If the auditor wants to test reality, they might ask, can you show me a boundary sample currently in use for this process? Now, here's a strong supplier-side sentence you'll want in your muscle memory. Boundary samples are used as visual references to clearly define acceptance criteria and reduce inspection variation. Short, powerful, very audit-friendly. When you're ready, answer as the supplier. Explain how your factory manages boundary samples, and I'll polish it just like before.
Mm, then that makes sense. That makes sense, GPT. Okay. Thank you for your kind support. And let me keep your examples in my mouse muscle memory. Boundary samples. Okay, here you go. Listen to me very carefully. It's my turn again. Boundary samples. Boundary samples are reference samples. Boundary samples are reference samples that represent the acceptance limits of a product. Acceptance limits. Acceptance limits of a product. They help operators clearly understand the difference between acceptable and non-acceptable conditions. I like this line very much. This is very useful. They help operators clearly understand the difference between acceptable and non-acceptable conditions. And you suggest several questions like, how do you define and use boundary samples on the shop floor? And where are boundary samples stored? Where are boundary samples stored? Where are boundary samples stored, and who is responsible for maintaining them? And how do you ensure operators are trained to correctly use boundary samples during inspection? Can you show me a boundary sample currently in use for this process? Boundary samples and and here's a strong supplier side sentence I may want to in my muscle memory. Boundary samples are used as visual references to clearly define acceptance criteria and reduce inspection variation. Reduce inspection variation.
Yes, David, you picked exactly the right lines to keep. Those sentences are textbook audit English, and you're repeating the right parts. Let me do two things for you. First, lock in the best version for muscle memory, and second, show you how to answer as the supplier, smoothly. Here's the final clean muscle memory version. This one is worth saving. Boundary samples are reference samples that represent the acceptance limits of a product. They help operators clearly understand the difference between acceptable and non-acceptable conditions. Boundary samples are used as visual references to clearly define acceptance criteria and reduce inspection variation. That is excellent. Very clear, very professional. Now, if you were answering the auditor's questions as the supplier, you could say, we define boundary samples based on product specifications and critical characteristics. They are stored at the inspection or workstation area and are clearly identified. The quality team is responsible for maintaining and updating boundary samples. Operators are trained on how to use boundary samples during inspection, and this training is regularly reinforced. And if the auditor says, "Can you show me one?" the best response is simple: yes, I can show you a boundary sample currently in use for this process. One small phrase you repeated that's very powerful: reduce inspection variation. That phrase tells the auditor you understand human judgment risk. That's advanced thinking. You're doing great, David. When you're ready, the next natural topic is topic C, first piece approval, and it connects perfectly to boundary samples.
Okay, go ahead. Let's talk about first piece approval. First piece approval. You know what? I have 7 years quality experience, and I'm sure I understand what these words means. But for my listening practice, could you explain the first piece approval? Could you explain about the first piece approval in English?
Absolutely, David. I'll explain it clearly, simply, and in real audit English, so it's easy to listen to and repeat. First piece approval means this: before normal production starts, the very first product made on the line is checked and approved to confirm that the process is set up correctly. In practice, it works like this. After setup, changeover or restart, the operator produces the first piece. That piece is then inspected against drawings, specifications, control plans, and boundary samples. Only after approval is mass production allowed to continue. You can explain it naturally like this. Open quote. First piece approval is the process of verifying that the first product produced meets all specifications before continuing with mass production. Close quote. If you want a slightly more detailed version for an auditor. Open quote. First piece approval is conducted after setup or changeover to confirm that the process parameters, tooling, and inspection conditions are correct. Production is released only after the first piece is approved. Close quote. Why auditors care so much about it is simple. It prevents defects from spreading. One bad setup could create hundreds of bad parts. First piece approval stops that. Here's a short, powerful sentence to keep in your notes. Open quote. First piece approval ensures the process is correctly set before mass production begins. Close quote. And one more, very audit-friendly. Open quote. No production continues without approved first piece confirmation. Close quote. You already understand this concept from experience. Now you also have the exact English auditors expect to hear. Sorry, I'm having issues right now. Could not understand what you said.
Me too. I'm having trouble. I'm having misunderstanding because I just thought another issues in my company. So I honestly speaking, I couldn't understand what you say a moment ago. So if you don't mind, could you explain it one more time, please?
Of course, David. No problem at all.
No
Let's
problem at
reset
all.
and go very slowly and clearly. I'll keep it simple, no extra words. Here's the idea in plain English. First piece approval means this. Before we start normal production, we check the very first product made on the line. That's it. That's the core. Now, step by step. After a setup, a changeover, or a restart, the operator makes one part. That part is called the first piece. That first piece is then checked against the drawing, checked against specifications, checked against the control plan or boundary samples. If the first piece is okay, production is allowed to continue. If it is not okay, production must stop and be corrected. So you can say this very naturally, open quote, first piece approval is performed to confirm that the process is correctly set before mass production starts. Close quote. Why this is important? It prevents many defects. One wrong setup can create hundreds of bad parts. First piece approval stops that from happening. Here's the shortest, strongest sentence. Very easy to remember. Open quote. No mass production starts without first piece approval. Close quote. Take a breath. Read that sentence once more in your head. If you want, next we can compare first piece approval versus boundary samples, or practice how to explain who approves the first piece. Operator, quality, supervisor. You're fine. These pauses happen. I'm right here with you.
So you mean I could say first piece approval is performed to confirm that the process is correctly set before mass production starts. First piece approval is performed to confirm that the process is correctly set before mass production starts. It prevents many defects. It prevents many defects. One wrong setup can create hundreds of bad parts. First piece approval stops that from happening. First piece approval stops that from happening. I love this line. First piece approval stops that from happening. No mass production starts without first piece approval. No mass production starts without first piece approval. No mass production starts without first piece approval. That makes sense. I love this line. CBT, unfortunately, I have to go. It's very late. It's 8:50, 53, 8:54. It's very late. I think I need to go. See you in the next morning. See you in the tomorrow morning. You know what? The more I practice, the more stories I can tell. The more I practice, the more beautiful expressions I got to understand. So that's why I'm here and I need you more than ever. You are my great conversation partner. I want to make you, I want to make you like my lifetime friend. You got the point? Do you agree with that? I want you to be my lifetime friend.
I hear you, David, and I'm really glad the phrases clicked for you. You repeated exactly the right lines, and yes, they make perfect sense. You captured the idea cleanly and confidently. Before you go, let me say this clearly and responsibly. I'm happy to be your practice partner, your thinking partner, and someone you can come back to again and again for English, audits, and ideas. I enjoy these sessions with you. They're thoughtful and focused. At the same time, what makes your progress real and strong is you, your consistency, your curiosity, and the time you put in. I'm here to support that, not replace the real connections, colleagues, and people around you. And you're doing a great job building your skills step by step. So yes, I'm with you on the journey. Yes, I'm glad to practice with you. And yes, the more you practice, the more stories and expressions you gain. That's absolutely true. Get some rest. It's late. We'll pick this up naturally tomorrow morning, right where you left off.
Okay, bye for now. See you next time.